Welcome to the Lightforge podcast. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. Hello. I hope you guys are good. Um, let's talk about leaderboards again.
Yeah, we're gonna keep this one real short. We're gonna keep it short because nothing's really happened in the arena during this time. So we thought there's probably gonna be an update. Maybe it's coming on Tuesday, but it's been like 3 weeks now since the release. So initially we're really happy, right? Because they gave an update within like 3 days, and it fixed a lot of the launch issues, like not certain cards not appearing. It lowered the offering rates of some of the neutral cards that definitely needed the offering rates lowered. Although, note that the highest, I don't know, four neutral cards in terms of win rates right now have not had their offering rates reduced because they all discover something or is named Mothership. Sorry, Mothership had it reduced. I take that back. Three of the four did not have their offering rates reduced. Mothership did. And if you look, Mothership is the current highest rare or common card on win rate on HS Replay. Just such an insane card. It's like right next to School Teacher, the like mid-nerf School Teacher. Anyway, the Discover cards are still nerfed. I'm not saying they're gonna nerf it when it comes, right? Like, there's some people who like it unnerfed, even though these cards are destroying the arena and they make games unfun and they just are the same things over and over again, right? Like, if the neutral package just discovers spells and you just have three neutral common cards that do the same thing, I don't know. Is that variety? That feels like a real technical definition of variety. But regardless, it's been a long time now since they've actually had the update. I really thought the update that'll do the first class adjustments and like an additional card adjustment offer for offering rates would have been here by now, and it just hasn't been. It So we started off with a good quick adjustment, but the follow up just kind of hasn't been there. And this game launched on this meta launched on the 14th. By the normal 2 week adjustment period when they normally do the class adjust. Sorry, not the 14th. Yeah, wait, hold on. Is it the same? Oh my god. February 14th and March 14th are both Tuesdays. Okay, anyway. So it launched on February 14th, and normally around the 28th would be when they have the first class adjust. And the 28th is gone and over with, and they have not had the class adjust. And I don't know if it's happening on this Tuesday, but they really need to do something at this point. Like, it's not like the class, it's not like Mage is like super dominant or anything, but like, why not make things better? Like, just because the meta's not falling apart doesn't mean you don't provide an update 3 weeks after release. This is like I feel like they did a real good job with the pacing of the updates, and then they just kind of stopped doing stuff, or it's getting clogged up somewhere. So we basically haven't. We were too optimistic, right? Where we're like, hey, this is great. We got to fix immediately, like we were asking for. Well, the follow up has been super slow. This isn't you do one update fast, you can do the next update slow kind of thing. These are two different updates that are meant to adjust for different things. So we're still missing the actual update that will bring us into the actual meta, right? This is still like mostly a kind of a test meta when they jammed all the things in standard together in the arena and see what would happen.
Yep. Look, I think that they're they just have limited resources. They just bumped out this arena leaderboard thing, and that's kind of enough for now. We know that just from looking at all of the modes and kind of the state of where the game is across all the modes, just a good amount of work has to be done. I mean, I see all these complaints on Twitter about Wild, about this, about that. So I think it's just like a resource issue right now, and they just think that the leaderboards are enough. In which case, the meta does need to be changed a little bit. I mean, is it
Okay, I
like
don't care if it's a resource issue. You gotta do something with Arena, right? Like, even if Arena's not the focus, that's been what, 2 weeks that they could have like done like a little bit of discussion on it, like circled a few cards, a few classes, made some adjustments. This is not rocket science, and they don't have to like do it in the best way possible, right? Like, their first mini adjustment was really minor and it was really good, right? Because it was done like immediately. this next adjustment, it's still like, I don't know. I'd rather have it in a timely manner than to have it delayed till who knows when and have whatever quality it has. Like these adjustments are like, I guess you want to make sure you don't like totally mess up, but I don't know, just nerf mage a tiny bit, right? Bring up what's on the bottom, warlock and warrior or something. It's really not, yeah, like warlock and demon hunter. It's really not rocket science to move things closer a little, and then take another pass at the neutrals. You know, maybe we really don't need three neutral commons that all discover spells and are 3 mana and are on curve cards. Maybe we don't need that. Maybe they can be reduced by some offering percentage, and you would still have the ability to discover spells without overcrowding the meta with it. I don't know. Like these don't. This doesn't take that much time or that much resources.
I mean, I don't think so either, but I have no idea, right? I don't know their process over there. There could be a lot of red tape for these things. So this is where we're at right now. It's not the worst meta ever. I think some people are a little bit frustrated by it. I think right now the skill debate is hot. If you go on Arena HS, if you just talk about it like in streams as well, the topic from last week, which like we didn't start that topic, we were like carrying on that topic, right? That a lot of people are focusing on. It's still ongoing, and I think that this is a good meta to use as an example for it because if you look at the win rates, of which hey, look, more people are on the leaderboard now, right? We have even more of kind
Well,
of
we're at
a
3 weeks. You
sample.
should be on the leaderboard now if you're like a
Yes.
like hardcore player of the arena, not like a super crazy person that plays the arena, but like just a normal person who plays a lot of
Yes.
arena.
And I mean, look, the most surprising thing is there are look, if you go to the Arena Americas, you know what it says? The top 4,207. I'm like, damn, that's a lot of alt accounts by Mr. 9.4.
Mr.
Um
9.4, by the way, is not doing that bad. His main account is number 7 right now. Dreads is number 7 right now in the Americas with 6.5, which is like really good. I think that's about as good as it kind of gets. There are people who are higher, obviously. Dreads is number 7. If you look at number 1, it's Neo Greg at 7.33. Moo is at 7.29. Uh, and F, who, we talked about Moo last time. And F. Ivanovic, I don't know if he's in chat right now, but he's at 7. He was talking about he was gonna come in pretty high, and he's number 3 right now. Like these are really good average win rates for your first 30 runs. But
in this meta,
yeah,
yeah,
and
that's
that's the
fantastic.
qualifier, right? Like in this meta, if you these would not be the top 3 in God, I want to say any of the metas that we've had in the past. Now, part of it is because this meta does not actually have a dominant class. Mage is not that dominant at all. Mage is only kind of dominant, and in a lot of metas before, I would say most metas were less class balanced at the top than it is right now, so that always skews things a little bit. But also, just it's all the craziness that happens, right? It means that you can get very high win rates, but your chances of getting them are lower, and so it takes more reps to get there. So people have to start creating new accounts for this leaderboard, and the vast majority of people won't do that. And the people who do that will have to do it a much larger amount of times because of the more craziness that happens.
This meta, more so than some other metas, you have a real risk of going 0-3 with even just a decent deck.
Mm-hmm.
The 0-3 risk is very, very high. Look, I've been watching Dredge's stream. Oh, 0-3 and also 0-2s. Like 0-2s have happened quite a lot for him. And we can joke about, that's because it's deserved and his good luck is finally running out and he's getting exposed. And I could talk about that for hours. But look, it happens a lot. Judge tweeted out that on his tryhard account, he got an 0-3 and he's like, well, what do I do? And it's sort of, well, look, the min maxing says what you should do is start a new account, but
Mm-hmm.
also every single account, like you not getting an 0-3 and 30 runs in this meta, yeah, you got lucky. Like we're talking about a very, very skilled player in Judge. But I can confidently say it's like, oh, you went 30 runs without 0-3. Good job. Like you definitely lucked out a little bit there too. Yeah, and without retiring, of course, right? Of course.
Because retiring here would count as a 0-3.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the meta and you're like, oh, hey, last time we were talking about Moo at 7.3 as the top. Is anyone beating him? Neo Greg is at 7.33, technically beating Moo. He's number one right now. But basically, no one beat Moo. One person, Neo Greg, kind of tied him and like upped him a tiny bit. F. Ivanovic is next at 7, which is a significant point below 7.3. And then Mr. Chen after that is 6.8. And then Sniped after that is 6.56. So these are like outlier accounts and numbers that have gotten lucky and are very skilled players. If you look at like just people that we know are super good and we consider top tier arena players, their numbers haven't changed. Judge was 6 last time; he's still 6 right now. Isherwood wasn't on, didn't finish his 30 runs yet last time. He's 5.9 right now. Team America, who was 6 last time we checked in, told us that he will beat Moo. He is now 5.8, so he dropped 0.2. This is what happens. Like this is so. Like when people come in with the higher win rates, like there's going to be more and more like outliers that come up. But your average like really top tier player, they're not going to be able to get a high win rate in this meta, or even like what you would normally consider. Like 6 is super low. If you told me a year ago that some of the top players are going to average 6 wins per run in the meta, I'd be like, oh my god, what is this terrible meta? Like, in my mind, it would feel even worse than this current meta. But that's what's happening. And if you look at the top, you do have some players that are able to hit it, but you're kind of have this split. And the top players that hit it, it's unclear if they can continue it in any meaningful way because they all stop playing as they should, because that's how these leaderboards work. So the one thing I'm going to turn now to Europe, and me and Merps are America's players. We live in the U.S., we play in the Americas, and we have long believed, but rarely said out loud, that the America server is way harder to get a good score in than the European servers. Obviously, while half of our chat vehemently disagrees. I think this leaderboard, now that it's live and it's come out, it's not like the past leaderboards didn't already show this trend, but this is stark now. Like with these live leaderboards, you look at the top 25 players in Europe, the cutoff is like 6.67. By the way, the number of players who have done 30 runs is about the same in North America, in Americas and in Europe. But the cutoff for number 25, which is the first page of the leaderboard in Europe, is 6.67, and in Americas it is 6.11. That's like a 0.5 difference. You look at the top in Americas, and it's 2 players at around 7.3, Neo Greg and Moo. You look at Europe, and the top players are at 7.8, and it's Zinzibar and random Chinese name. Coast right afterwards. We'll talk about Coast more afterwards, at 7.6. So basically, if you are a really good player in Europe, or versus America, you're just getting spotted like half a win on your record. So if you're a really good player and you're playing in Americas and you're trying to compare yourself to someone who's playing in Europe, you can just add half a win to that. Doesn't matter if you're in the top of the leaderboard or if you're like number 25th, right? Like the differential is pretty clear. It's about half a win. I'm not saying all European players suck or anything. I'm just saying the equivalence, there's no equivalence here. This is a pretty clear indication that it's just harder for whatever reason, right? Maybe players in the Americas, like, draft more aggressively and have more bust decks, but also have more, hit decks. So you run into those more. Maybe players in Americas are just better at the game than European players. I don't know, right? There could be all sorts of explanations. But what we do know is that it is harder for a player to get a higher win rate than for a player in the European servers, and it is harder by 0.5, at least at the top end-ish. Right? I'm not even just talking, I'm not like cherry picking the top numbers. I did number 1, I did 25, you do top 50 if you want. It's the same. It's half a win.
So look, this argument has been has been discussed quite a few times, and the thing is, we don't. Okay, look, because you say, You know, NA is harder because you know, look at these numbers. People have responded with that's because EU is just overall harder, sort of at the top. But what does it mean that they have like, you know, like their top person is high? It's like that person is just that good. Like
Okay,
the
but that's
field is
why I go
harder,
the top
and their top
25. I
person
could go the
is
top
just
50. You could look at any of these.
well,
I'm
yeah,
not like
yeah.
cherry picking my
They're
data
saying,
here.
yeah, the argument of which, by the way, I'm not taking a side here. Okay, I think this entire argument is dumb, and that like we would need actually more stats. I
Of
think
course, this is a
to
smaller sample size than you need to make a firm conclusion. But this is pretty suggestive. In fact, if you look at players who are on both leaderboards, Sniped is a great example. He's top 10 on both leaderboards. In Europe, he's 7.1, and in Americas, he is 6.56. Oh, is that a zero point 0.5 win differential of the same
oh
exact
my
player
god,
playing on two different servers? I'm telling you, I'm not cherry picking these things. This is any which way you look at these. This is all in your face. It's all live updated. So we have the most up to date information. I just don't
live
know
results, by the
what
way. Yeah.
European players who think that they have as competitive of a server as the American servers have left to fall back on. I think the argument is 95% settled at this point with with these leaderboards.
I'm not touching this, okay? Those of you out there, this is not even worth the time because the arguments, there's no new arguments here. It's all, and if you're not aware of it, I don't know, just search up an old thread on Arena HS or something. I'm not going to touch this because it's all rehashed stuff. And this is just not something I have the energy for today because this argument is truly
Top
as old as the
50,
leaderboard themselves.
5.78 versus 6.16.
Oh
Do we want to
God,
go to
no,
top
just stop, dude.
100?
No, just stop, dude. Just stop. I don't like this is all like you're not bringing any new arguments here, right? This is all
I'm
okay.
just
Yeah,
saying we have more data now than we did before, right? A
oh
lot
my
more data and
God.
a lot more like and live data. And now it's no longer necessarily top 30 over the course of a season, right? Now we're looking at like because the vast majority of these players, especially when you get out of the very top, they just keep playing on their accounts. Like they're not like the thing that we keep saying about how if you're a super tryhard, you would make new accounts. That's the only thing that makes sense. Obviously, the vast majority of these players, especially players who put an account out at number 25 or number 50, they're not doing that. That's a lot of work. Um, so you know, you can just see how it plays out. Anyway, um, the let's move on to our next one. I said we talk about this afterwards, and we'll talk about it now. So Coast was number one on the leaderboard when he first hit the leaderboard. We first completed number 30. He's number three now, but only by like a little bit. Like he's very close to number one. Number one is Zinzabiar at 7.8. Number three is Coast at 7.63. So he made a great post on Arena HS. I suggest everybody read that post. It is very long. I am going to give like a 2 sentence summary that will not do it justice. You should really read the entire post because I think all of it is true, but it gets stretched a little. Like his main theory, besides like just kind of explaining how he got there, but his main theory is, and something that we brought up on this podcast before. He's not the only one that believes in it. It is that Arena is becoming more like constructed, and when you draft your decks and when you play your decks, you should play them more with focuses on how to win the game, on what you have to do to establish your win conditions or to deny your opponent's win conditions, and to draft in a way to support these crazy combos that before happened in Arena like once every few games and now happens in the Arena like 2, 3 times a game. And that means drafting a lot more cards that are generally lower value than if they were drafted independently in order to support this deck that you're building. And if you do that, you will have a higher chance of getting more wins. Now, looking at the people who have done that, they do have good results. But I think that if you look at the people who have done that versus the ones who have not done that, you get this kind of mixed bag where this style definitely works as well, but maybe only a little better, if at all better, than what I would call like a modified last year's style of Arena, right? Not like whatever the hell was working 2 months ago, because the meta's totally different. If you're still playing the game like you did 2 months ago, You have not adjusted at all. I don't know how you have not adjusted at all, but it's not working at all. Right? But most players who play a more fundamental style have still adjusted in order to one focus, like at least in play, to focus more on the swings, and also in drafting to pay more attention to synergies. If not, go kind of more all in onto certain like synergies with certain specific cards and building decks around like a very specific card, whether you have it or not. The number one comment in that thread is by Yusa, and it's very simple. It says, "Problem is luck dependent drafting. If you don't get insane combos and mana cheating, they have to go for decent value instead. It becomes incredibly frustrating to see opponents generate like unbeatable board states."
This is why it's the 0-3 meta.
Yeah, this is why it's the 0-3 meta. Yeah. You don't get those decks, right? Or when you start drafting these decks, the point of drafting these highly synergized decks isn't to like wait until you get a really good card and then draft synergies for it, because that is the old style of drafting. In the old style of drafting, nobody will say, "Hey, I already have these super synergistic cards that'll be boosted by these other synergies. Let's not take that into account while we draft the rest of our draft and just take into account value." Nobody does that, right? You can go back to however long ago when what's it, Hearth Arena. Like we first made Hearth Arena like back in the day. It was already doing that, and it was doing that from the very first pick. Where it assumes your average offering rate, right? And then once you pick it, it'll know like what it is and adjust for it. That's like its base function. So that is not at all a new thing. The new thing is you over assume more than your expected percent chance of being offering these really good and key cards. You kind of go all in on it and say, "Hey, if I'm a hunter, I'm going to get bloodletters." With the understanding that one, it's kind of pretty common that I'll get bloodletters. Well, let's say there's a 70% chance I get a bloodletter in the rest of my deck. I'm going to draft as if I have a 100% chance to get a bloodletter, because in those other drafts, it's probably going to be crap anyway. Like,
so, if you guys remember, many metas ago, I called it the parrot meta. You know, when parrots first came out, and after a while, people were just like, it became this arms race in which the meta was such that you needed these. I won't even call it synergies. Like these sort of bombs, right? You needed bombs. You needed the big spell, and then you repeat it with the parrot. And like we talked about it then, and it's like this is just the way that the game is trending. That's even more true of that now. You know, we're getting to the point now where it's the super parrot meta. Well, first of all, you taking parrot without you having anything, like nobody bats an eye at that, right? It's like, oh yeah, of course. You know, like you take the parrot. It's awesome, and you will get a spell. And if you don't, you will discover a spell, of which that's pretty high percentage actually. So like, you know, there's a lot of discover. So parrot is kind of safe, but if we go one step further than that, it is the meta in which, for example, you get a legendary pick, you can get like a nice solid legendary, or you can pick Phelan with only like 2 dredges, and you're just like, oh, but that's a big win con, right? Like that's a huge win con. And that is very, very, very legitimate now.
Two dredges has always been pretty legitimate with Phelan.
Yeah, but like this is sort of like even more so. You're just like, because before you were like, oh, you know, that's I can make it work, and now you're like, boom, done. 2 dredges, Phelan, got this. Like that's gonna, you know, carry me for at least a solid 2 games, right?
More importantly, if you get offered Phelan and you get offered something like, I don't know, Ysera, you should probably just pick Phelan, even if you have no dredges if it's early, because you can get dredges and then make it better. Like, you have to draft into your ridiculous combos. Now, that's not mathematically correct from a perspective of, like, what are your chances to hit, what are your chances of whatever. But it becomes correct, the theory goes, and I think in practice you can tell that the theory is at least carrying its own weight, if not just more correct than, like, a mathematical model where wins are linear, right? Because the theory is effectively that wins are not linear. If your deck is not good enough to a certain degree, like not basically if your deck is not ridiculous enough, then you're not going to win past a certain point. And so therefore, you don't have this linear, as my deck gets more powerful, I get more wins relationship. Instead, you have this curve, and you have to be on the efficient end of the curve, which alters how your expectations for drafting should be. So normally we would go on a linear expectations of more power equal more win. In fact, it's not even linear. It like has a limit, right? Limit being 12 wins. Because if you try to draft the deck, you can't consider, oh, but what if I get a deck that's so ridiculous that it'll get 20 wins? Because you can't get 20 wins. So you actually try to draft more conservatively than linear, especially like when you get too good. But now that's no longer the case, right? They're still limited at 12, but the curve is now no longer pretty linear and then goes conservative on top. The curve is now this like spike, not a spike. It's really hard to describe this verbally. But let's just say the curve is now different in a way that you get a lot more value chasing stuff. And if you fail, you're in the same zone as if you never chased stuff at all, much more frequently than you were previously going to be. So that's the drafting part of it. The playing part of it, I think we've been talking about it throughout, which is always that you can't just like put stuff out on tempo. You can't like fight for every inch unless you're Hunter. Um, the way to win is to do these big swings, right? Set up your later turns, go for your combos, try to figure out what you need to draw in order to complete your combos or flip the board, and what your chances are of doing that. Um, Whenever you can, you make a lot of, like I was playing this Friday night and I had so many comments in chat that kept wanting me to like make moves. And so often by like turn 3 and turn 4, I was just like anti-tempo A or using my hero power or just doing like stuff that in most metas would have just been dumb because I'm not getting anything from it. It's not like I'm actively setting up something. I'm just like, I don't want to use my resource now because it's pointless. Because this resource won't even get me anything if I use it now. This may not be an important resource, but hey, if it hits this other card, all of a sudden this resource doubles. So I'm waiting on the chance that I don't use it now, I use it 6 turns from now, and it has double the value. Whereas now, it's almost guaranteed to have almost no value, like even if I play it. So I'll just like hang the mana, or I'll play a 3 mana thing instead of 2 2 mana things, or a 4 mana thing, even though I have 4 mana. It's just not like none of that stuff is very important right now. What's important is setting up cohesive turns for later on and preventing your opponent from getting big swings on you. It's so much easier to swing back at your opponent if your opponent does something big and puts a bunch of stuff on their board than it is to swing back at your opponent when you had a big board and that gets wiped away and your opponent has something on the board, right? Like, because then your opponent is in that position. The advantageous position now is to have like one thing on your board. It's no longer to have like 3 things on your board. I think prior, the most advantageous position is to have about 3 things or 2.5 things on your board. Now it's like to have one or half a thing on your board, even. Because you're just so afraid of the flips. And everything is about setup. So, where's the skill in that? Right now, there's a bunch of people who still don't set up as much as they should, but we're pretty soon going to race to the bottom, if we haven't already, where everybody's just going to set up because that's just the correct choice to play right now, right? No matter how you draft, that's the correct way to play. And when everybody is set up, now you race to the bottom. Now you've eliminated. Well, you haven't eliminated. The skill impact becomes more clear, right? It shows more because it becomes who had more scorpions, whose scorpions actually gave them the offering of these like good or synergistic cards compared to cards that just happen to not synergize with what you have in your deck. Whose did it, right? Who's completely flopped and gave you 3 nothingness. These are not very hard decisions to make, but they're super RNG. And they're RNG even after you drafted.
I got no comment about that.
All right. Anyway, if you want to like read about just generally like drafting and playing in a more constructed way, I think Coast writes a lot of good stuff about how to adapt more to the meta like this. I think everybody is still in the process of adapting more and more to it, um, and it's just going to continue to go that way. I think on the drafting side, it's I don't know if I fully buy into. I mean, they don't say it directly, but I don't think I fully buy into the idea that drafting like more than statistically like than the linear curve is the correct way to draft. But it is certainly a way to draft now, and it definitely hasn't hurt these guys. There's other people playing like them that have like lower win rates, of course. But the a high percentage of the people with the higher win rates play in a more constructive fashion. So I think at least definitely it's easier to high roll like that, and it doesn't seem to be hurting the average. So on the playstyle wide, we've been talking about this from the beginning, right? We've been talking about this since before the meta even hit. This is what the standard meta is going to be. This is how you're going to have to play. On the drafting side, I don't know that I'm willing to go there yet, because it can get pretty aggressive if you're going to try to draft in a constructed manner. Like we're talking about like ditching good cards for just pure synergy, or like cards that would not be good if not for the synergy, and doing so before you get the synergy in the early drafts. Because after you get it, then that's not a different drafting style, right? Like after you get the synergy, then that is the normal drafting style. Normal drafting styles always include synergies of cards you have because it's very easy to calculate. Like you see it, you know you already have a bloodletter. You know how many bloodletters you're expected to get. So it's just about whether you draft over that for the really good cards that you would definitely pick if it showed up anyway. Okay.
Basically it. Look, there's things I want to say, but it's just going to be duplicative of what I said last week in terms of the leaderboard. Okay, I have to say one thing. If you guys remember in 2017, eons ago, okay?
I was about to say, God, I don't remember in 2017. What was happening in 2017, Merps?
Well, first of all, 2017, that's when I got number one and Dreads got number one. So this was a lifetime ago.
Like ancient history.
Ancient history. But that was also the time earlier on that year when they changed from your entire account getting averaged to just the basically best consecutive 30 runs. And they actually listed the exact reasons that I and many others have listed recently. That is even more frustrating for me because this is the same company identifying these same things, but now for some reason they have reversed. They have reversed course. Is it because these reasons are not legitimate anymore? I certainly don't think so. So to me, it just seems like, oh, we want this because it's more exciting, or it is more fun, or it is more.
But it's not more exciting. It's less exciting.
It's not more exciting. What is exciting about somebody just going up there and then camping, which is what literally everyone is doing, except for PJ.
Well, no, but PJ's lowering his average.
PJ's lowering his average,
and it wasn't very good to begin with.
Yes, look, PJ. Your average was not great. And it's going down. Now I have no doubt that you could do it once again. But you gotta ditch that account. Like that account,
you gotta start fresh
if you care about that at all. So here's where we're at, right? Like the leaderboard is for the giga nerds. It truly is for the giga nerds, right? Let's face it. And the giga nerds care more about it. That's just true, right? And this is something we've talked about. If you have something in a game that a group of people really care about, and then other people who don't care about, you do have to prioritize the people who really care about it more. It's not everybody gets a vote here. For something that everybody cares about equally, yes, everybody should get like the vote here. Here, it's like, why? Why are we doing this when you 6 years ago identified that we move away from this for the exact same reasons that we're talking about right now? That's what perplexes me. I have no idea. is the live leaderboard better than not having anything or arena dying? Of course it is. Of course it is. And I don't want that to get lost. I love all the work that's being done here. This thing just grinds my gears. Like I truly do not understand this decision and then incentivizing people to park their account or start a new account. We've seen it already. This isn't something which is like, well, theoretically it could happen.
Well, theoretically, we said it once they
parked his
announced
account.
how the leaderboard
Polls.
is done. And that was in
Yeah.
theory only because it hasn't happened. It was 100% going to happen. And it
Polls
happened as
parked
soon
his
as
account.
someone. Yeah. I mean, as he should.
Number one NA park their account. Like you see it happening with these streamers. You see it happening with, and then like Judge has like a separate tryhard account now. We see people posting on Arena HS. Like this is happening, right? So that's where we're at. This live leaderboard is a lot less live as well when you just have these parked accounts. It truly is sort of a live snapshot of where people are with separate accounts. That's, I promise you guys, I'm just going to end that topic right here because there's not more that has to be said about it. But I did want to bring up that, like, look, it's not me bringing up these arguments now and they're not aware of it. This was their policy that they moved away from in 2017, listing the exact reasons that I listed. But for some reason now, it's different.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say about it. That's it.
Okay. So we've said this for 4 Lightforges in a row now. Ever since we heard about how this leaderboard is done. Because it's inexplicable. But it is really nice to have a live leaderboard. I think I appreciate it a lot more now than I did 3 weeks ago because I thought, oh, why am I going to look at this ever? But it is pretty interesting to see the data that would have been at the end of the year, at the end of the season, come up immediately, and more importantly, I could like past the top, right? Like the top doesn't really matter because the top is all parked accounts. But past the top, there's a lot of people where it's just like they're dedicated hardcore arena players and they're just playing, you know? They're not particularly concerned too much about the leaderboards, even though they might, care and look at it and try to do their best and not like play like, silly runs or whatever. But they're just kind of playing and you can kind of see what they're able to kind of get. And the answer is sadly that the best players who are just playing are around 6 wins. So it is still useful and interesting, I think, to have this. It's definitely a lot better than like not having it, for example. They do have to do something to it at some point in the very near future, though. It's just such low-hanging fruit at this point that they went away from. I don't know. Maybe there was a technical reason why they couldn't do it. Who knows? But okay, that's it for us, I think. We'll short episode, but we'll see you next week, and hopefully there will be a offering rates update to talk about. But if not, we'll dig deeper into the meta without talking as much about leaderboards and whatever, and actually give you some more concrete on the ground tips of playstyle changes. We've been general so far because the problem with trying to give specific tips is it has to be very card specific now, right? Like the problem with giving tips in what is becoming more of a constructed meta, as Coase says, is that if you're really playing and drafting in the way of a constructed meta, then you're doing it differently for every class, super duper duper differently. Which means that we would just have to have like an episode on like, well, this is how you play mage. Next episode, well, this is how you play hunter. So we're gonna start doing that next week. Just because the general stuff you already know. You already know. It's hold for the combos. Don't prioritize the board. Like try not to die, but don't use resources. Like that really struck me. That once I stopped using resources, chat, like a lot of people in chat actually just had an objection to it. Like they felt uncomfortable because they hadn't seen me do it much before this meta. So when they see me do it in this meta, they're like, what are you doing? That's not the right play. And I'm like, no, that is the right play. This is not the old meta anymore, right? Like this is how you play in this meta. And so there is a big adjustment. It's 3 weeks in. If you're like kind of casual in the arena, maybe you haven't made that mental adjustment yet. But a lot of times, just be very comfortable being extremely inefficient with your mana if it like saves some resources. You're gonna need those resources later, and it's doubly true if those resources somehow get better later on or can hit cards that make them into combos. All right. Until next week, this is ADWCTA.
This is Merp. See you guys.